Hello, welcome back to the Smart Wealth series. We're going to go into video number 2 today, and what we're going to talk about is the biggest scam ever perpetrated on the American people and really the entire planet. This gets really deep, and we're only going to scratch the surface of it today. We're just going to give you enough information to where you know what's going on and you know enough where you can go and do your own research, okay? On this particular part of it, because it's so deep, it's so broad, it's so malignant that there's only so much we can do here in the video portion. What this is doing, this is your red pill. Okay, if you ever seen the movie The Matrix, they have the red pill and the blue pill. Blue pill, you stay asleep and you continue thinking that the world is hunky-dory and everything sunshine and rainbows. You know, it's night time. If you want to get the truth, you take the red pill, okay? My job here is to make sure that you get the red pill today, where you understand what's going on in the world and how this relates to you and how you are being victimized, but you don't have to be any longer, okay? So let's jump right into it. We're going to go ahead today and talk about banking and educational system scams. Now, first of all, we're going to get into how the manipulation by banks is there to take your money, and why isn't wealth information taught in schools, and the monetary system fraud, misconceptions about money. And look, the misconceptions about money, that's got to be a multi-video thing, because we have so many different misconceptions about money, and it takes a long time to go through them all. So I've decided to go ahead and add additional value and just make multiple videos about that instead of just running through them, so we can cover them all better, okay, to where you really understand these misconceptions and how they can hurt you if you allow those misconceptions to remain part of your consciousness. Also, we're going to talk about cryptocurrency, why it was created, and we're going to give a 40,000 foot view of blockchain technology. All right. So let's jump into this. We're going to go ahead back to our book, and I'm going to read this a little bit. You didn't get this program so you can watch me read. You can obviously read on your own, but there's a few things I want to point out here. The conspiracy against your wealth is not just some random conspiracy theory by guys with tinfoil hats on, okay? There's a book that was written that's absolutely based 100% in fact and truth. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Allow me to interject that here. I'm going to write it here. The Creature from Jekyll Island. Okay? It was written by a man named Edward Griffin, okay, or G. Edward Griffin, and it's a look at the Federal Reserve and how it was created, why it was created, for whom it was created, and the entire purpose behind it is not as benign as you may have once thought. These banking scams that we've been seeing in the news, you know, since 2008 is when a lot of this started coming to light. It gets extraordinarily deep on a level of socialism, on a level of greed, on a level of completely amorality, or immorality, I should call it immorality, and to a level of where these larger banking institutions like the International Monetary Fund, for example, okay, was founded by these same type of people. They're all working together, they're all colluding together, and you know, like for example, the International Monetary Fund will lend money to foreign dictators to where they can enslave people and have the financing behind them to actually enslave people. So they become part of the International Monetary Fund, and so which works with the UN, so they can create a central bank and produce their own money as well, okay? So and further fund the entire system. It's a really despicable thing that they're doing. I don't want to focus on that too much, but you have to understand that there are things at play here that most people that go unnoticed. Okay, they go unnoticed. So The Creature from Jekyll Island, it's a big book, but you can get it on Audible. Okay, you can get it on audible.com and just listen to it in your spare time. That way you can have an idea of where this this thing has gone up until this point. Okay, now the reason they call it The Creature from Jekyll Island is an island off the coast of Georgia, I believe. And what happened is that back in 1910, there were 6 men that controlled almost a quarter of the world's entire wealth. 6 people. Okay, you think we have a problem today with the accumulation of wealth in the hands of a few? Think about back then, where a quarter of the world's wealth was in the hands of 6 people, since people that controlled it in the banking industry. So they got together and decided that they were going to make the Federal Reserve. Okay, it took them until 1913 to get the Federal Reserve Act passed. Okay, that's when it came off the gold standard. They could then start printing money for their own benefit. And so anyway, here's the bottom line: is that you need to go and read The Creature from Jekyll Island. That's the name of it, is Jekyll Island, and that's where this thing had taken place in 1910. And then the book will continue to go through and just continue to red pill you on how the whole system works. I thought it was going to be boring. It's extremely eye-opening and extremely interesting. So go read or get on audible.com and get The Creature from Jekyll Island. Very, very, very much worth it. So I wrote that the rushing waters of debt have eroded what was once sound financial wisdom in the caverns of canyons and desperation. Unfortunately, big banks have kept these major financial gurus in place and promoted them, and to make sure you stay exactly where they want you. Now, where do they want you? They want you in debt. They want you in debt. The entire banking system has been created today to make sure that the middle class funds their feudalistic system of big banking so they can control everything in the world, including you. Conspiracy theorist, right? Well, that's not really true anymore. But when it's actually fact, it's no longer conspiracy. It's happening. It has happened. Okay, and now since we have the internet, we don't have any excuse to be ignorant of these facts. Okay, so just know that this is taking place right now, and at that level, at the Federal Reserve level, is where it starts, but it's going to affect you in a lot more ways than just on the Federal Reserve level, which causes inflation. Okay, inflation is the silent thief. Okay, it's the one that comes in the middle of the night and steals the dollar bill out of your wallet that you're never going to miss. Okay, or it's the coins lost in the couch, and somebody comes up and cleans from under the couch cushions. You never know it's gone. That's inflation. Okay, it's inflation when 10 years later you look, $20 could have bought half a basket full of groceries back when I was in college back in 2000, but now $20 doesn't get you much at all. It's $5 for a gallon of milk. Okay, so that's inflation. It's silent, and it takes from you and takes from you and takes from you. Okay, now I'm going to be discredited for voicing these truths. I understand that. I don't have a problem with it, because I'm the one that has to stand before the Lord on Judgment Day, and I'm going to tell you the truth no matter what. And I'm going to be quoting Christ in this, where he says the truth will set you free. And in this case, as in all cases of truth, once you're aware of the deception of these massive banking institutions and their minions, you'll no longer be a slave. That's the part of the red pill. Remember in The Matrix when Keanu Reeves takes the red pill? When Neo takes the red pill, what happens? He's freed from slavery. Okay? So let's go ahead and get our red pill. We're going to discover in this chapter the basic outline of how our money and debt structure is controlled in this country, designed to keep you from retirement. Okay, they don't want you to be able to have it easy and retire. Okay, and it's not like when they formed the Federal Reserve, that was their plan. Everybody comes in to start getting their cut and takes advantage of this whole system, and that's where we end up, you understand? So the investment banks have literally created massive market shorts and crashes, which have affected your account. So because of these systems, the FDIC that was put in place and stuff like that, oh, it's supposed to regulate the banks, right? Sure. No, what the FDIC does is a way for banks to get funded by the Fed and get bailed out. That's what the FDIC is about. It created heists, legal, massive heists, which has caused retirement accounts, which is what we're talking about in this book, to be emptied, simply to line their own pockets and create more control. Furthermore, you've been trained by the education system to accept these ups and downs of the market. Would you believe that these major banking institutions, 6 major banking institutions, own almost all the banks, even what you consider to be a small bank in your local area, whatever, is probably owned by one of the majors, and it might be through even a layer, might be 3 or 4 different companies that this is passed through, but eventually it gets back to J.P. Morgan Chase, okay, or eventually it gets back to Goldman. Right? So that's the way these things are going. And we've seen this over and over and over again, where small banks are getting eaten alive by the big ones. Now, let's take a look at the educational system for just a moment, and how you were brought up in the educational system, as was I, to believe that this is how the market works. And risk is just unavoidable if you want to make money in the market. You were trained to be a worker bee for the financial elite via the Rockefeller-contrived Board of Education. That's right. Rockefeller, the first one, came out and said, we're talking about John D. here, came out with the Board of Education. Now, originally, it looked to everybody, and it is, okay, a system to create a middle class. Because there was a big discrepancy. You had guys like John D. Rockefeller, and then you had, you had the wealthy people, and then you had people that amounted to basically what you might consider peasants, okay, in a feudalistic system. So John D. comes out and says, hey, education is not across the board. Okay, it's not everybody has access to education, so let's go ahead and make a Board of Education so everybody can have access to education, and they can get access to schooling and stuff like that, where everybody learns to read. Okay, and the federal government is going to fund it. Ultimately, it's a good plan, but it's been bastardized since then. Okay, they created a middle class on purpose, so that they could create educated workers, because they only teach you what they want you to know. The schools that Rockefeller's kids went to are not the same type of schools that we went to. Okay? The schools that Soros's kids go to are not the same type of schools that we went to. And why is that? They learn a different game than we do. We learn how to put money into a 401k and hope we get to retire one day if the market doesn't crash. That is lunacy. George Soros's kids learn how to bankrupt entire countries and profit from it. Do you understand the difference? Of course you do. You're a smart person. That's why you're checking this out. These people understand things that are only for their level of people. Okay, and they make moves in a completely different planet than we live on. Now, in 1913, Reverend Frederick Gates, the business advisor of John D. Rockefeller, wrote this letter in what he called the Country School of Tomorrow. He wrote, "In our dream we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand." With perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from our minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers, or men of learning, or of science. We are not to raise up among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. No, they don't want that. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, or musicians. Nor will we cherish even the humbler ambition to raise up from among them lawyers, doctors, preachers, statesmen, of whom we now have ample supply. So what did they want? If they don't want you to be a lawyer, a doctor, a preacher, a statesman, if they don't want you to be a painter, an artist, musician, if they don't want authors, orators, poets, men of letters, learned people, what do they want? They want factory workers. They want production. They want workers. Okay? That's what they want. Give you just enough education to where you can read and you're not stupid. Just enough education to where you're not completely ignorant of how the world works. But just enough education to where they can mold, their words, not mine, mold your consciousness as to what they want you to believe, how things operate. That was in 1913. And that Board of Education still operates that same way today. Have you taken your red pill yet? Now, initially the good Reverend makes quite a benign case in his letter, stating how impoverished and ill the rural areas of America were at the time, which is true. They proposed a method of rural education that would make people more productive and useful, using unlimited funds to make people happier and healthier. But we have to look at it deeper. Okay? What could go wrong? Rockefeller, as a philanthropist, he was. But it's deeper than that. There's one method of education for 99% of America, us. And that's the way of thinking that's instilled upon us through our current educational system, as we just spoke about. Go to work, get good grades, at school, get a good job, pay taxes, buy a house on credit, buy cars on credit, pay off the home with interest, pay more taxes, die, then pay taxes on your dead money. That's the system that they want you to be in. It's a worker bee system. Now, does that make us successful as a society? Some people would say yes. I don't think so. The same way Planned Parenthood called women's health all sound like a good idea, it's just marketing. The true reality is that it sounds more like murder your inconvenient child legally. It's just marketing, okay? What do we look at marketing? Is women's health, no matter what your stance is politically, this has nothing to do with that. Calling abortion of child women's health they call it women's health because, heck, who could be against women's health? You'd have to be a jerk to be against women's health, right? Don't you love your wife? How could you be against mammograms and women's health? Well, Planned Parenthood doesn't do mammograms. They only do abortions. That was proven. So calling it women's health is really a misnomer, and they do it on purpose. Okay? Red pill. Now, this is not this is about a retirement system, okay? This is a way to red pill you on how you can do the things that they do and not lose money in the market. Now, whatever Rockefellers and his cronies had planned would prove to be even more insidious, if that is even possible. But on Jekyll Island, a secret meeting was held by the world's top 6 bankers, which we spoke of earlier. They represented a quarter of the world's wealth, and this meeting created the Federal Reserve. They lobbied Congress to pass something called the Federal Reserve Act, enabling them to create a corporation that would issue money to the United States, which was backed by nothing, fiat currency, okay? Fiat means there's nothing behind it. They can just make as much as they want. A private corporation that would control the entire monetary system of the United States and eventually the world. They create money from nothing, literally nothing, and issue it to the United States, and the American taxpayer pays interest on it, it being, of course, nothing. An entire conversation of this is outside the scope of the book, and it's true. But just know that it created a system to bring all banking into the clutches and control of just a few major banks under the guise of the Federal Reserve, which is not even federal. It's just the name. It's not a government entity, and it's not federal. Most people have no clue that this is taking place. Okay? Now, we might call it say that, hey, look, there's a higher motive of creating and strengthening the American middle class through quality education, which is true. Okay? But is that what they really did? They did do that, but the reason they did it was not to create education in some form of philanthropy. The reason they did it was to create workers. Okay? Because remember, they don't want educated people, highly educated people. They don't want doctors and lawyers. They said that in the letter. They don't want doctors and lawyers. They want workers. Okay? Helping people to become educated so they can earn a better living is a good thing in short. But the byproduct, that's just a byproduct of the much larger scheme. The name of their game is bailout. And all we do is fund it. The way that we sit right now, with inflation, we're paying interest on money and paying taxes and paying interest, we are spectators of their sport. And until you read The Creature from Jekyll Island, you're not going to understand it fully as what, where that's going and what they do. Okay? So later in this book, we're going to talk about the financial game in the United States and the world, how it's completely rigged. It's rigged to take your money, and it always has been for the last 3 generations. But for the scope of this chapter, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to take your red pill, buy The Creature from Jekyll Island. Okay, and I'm going to put the author's name here, G. Edward Griffin. And then we're going to, I'm going to ask you to read chapter 1, or listen to chapter 1. And then 1 per day. That is 1 chapter per day. Okay? So, what we're looking at here is the basis. Okay? This is something you have to understand to protect yourself in your retirement and your family. Okay? So this is your homework. This is what you have to understand the basis of. I'm going to offer, I'm not going to offer. I'm going to ask you to also check out Robert Kiyosaki's Conspiracy of the Rich. Now, he's a very wealthy man himself, okay, but he's self-made. Conspiracy of the Rich. You can find that on Amazon. And also, he wrote a book called The Unfair Advantage. This is more red pill, okay? All of these things, The Conspiracy of the Rich, The Unfair Advantage, and The Creature from Jekyll Island. This is your red pill. This gets you in your mindset understanding where you need to be to understand how these things work, okay? And you don't have to understand it fully. You just have to know that there is this conspiracy out there, And when I say conspiracy, I don't mean that to discredit it. I mean that they have conspired, they have colluded together to create this entire system. And we'll get into that a little bit further in some different chapters. But for right now, this is what I want you to understand. God bless you, and I'll see you on the very next chapter and on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey there, Jeff Sokol again. So there's a couple of things that we didn't get into. One of them being the cryptocurrency thing we haven't gotten into yet. And another one was misconceptions about money. There's so many misconceptions about retirement and money that's going to take multiple videos on its own. And this was getting kind of long. So I didn't include those in this video yet. But I did want to show you this picture. Education, planned enslavement through lack of knowledge. H.L. Mencken said in response to what they were doing with the Board of Education, said the aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all. It is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level. Think Common Core. To breed and train a standardized citizenry. To put down dissent and originality. Now, there was a book written called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And if you're going to war, you need to know what weaponry the opponent has. That way you can defend against it. But it says right here on page 7, the quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the moat of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to maintain some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. This is the handbook exposing the weapons. It's showing you the guts. It's showing you the battle plan. And this is what they use. Okay? If you know what the weapons are, you can defend against those weapons. If you don't know what they are, then you're defenseless. That's not where we want to be. Anyway, I wanted to show this to you. It's very important. This kind of sums up the whole educational side of this deal and the banking side of this deal, right? So, thank you very much. I hope you got a lot out of this chapter. I know I really enjoyed writing it. I really enjoyed making this video. I can't wait to read your comments and hear what you have to say about this particular subject. And this is not what this whole course is about, but this lays the groundwork so you know what we're up against and what we can go do to make sure we don't fall into these traps, okay? God bless you. Thank you very much for your time. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.